Satyamev Jayate. So in this video we are going to discuss how India got its name. This is the very first chapter of our ancient history series. So let's explore the content table. So this is our content table, and as you can see it is pretty much messed up. So let's fix this. Awesome. So as you can see it's now fixed. The very first topic that we are going to select is the official name of our country. Then in the second section or the second part we are going to discuss what India was known during the prehistoric period. Then we are going to look into the fact why India was called as Meluha. Then we are going to discuss why India is also known as Bharat. Then we are going to look into the concept of Aryabharta. Then we will understand how the word Hindu was derived. The next section is how the term India came into existence. Then we are going to discuss about Hindustan, how the term Hindustan actually originate. Then we will also discuss why in the ancient and the medieval ages India was also known as Jambudvip. Then we are also going to discuss what is the meaning of Ajnabavarsha. Then we are going to look into what is Chuantu, which is another name for India, right? Then we are going to discuss the most important part, India versus Bharat debate. So let's get started. Remember, this chapter is very important for UPSC. So you already know this. India is a land of diversity and richness, and its name actually reflects that. There are a ton of names for India, a lot of names. As you can see, Hindustan, Hindu, Hindustan, Jambudvip, Aryabharta, Chuantu, Bharatvarsha, Ajnabavarsha, Meluha, Bharat, India, Hodu. So these are the names of this particular region that we refer now as India. A lot many names, right? So let's start with what is the official name of our country. So we are going to discuss what is the official name of India. So let's say you have started a WhatsApp group. On this particular WhatsApp group, you have added, let's say, 10 friends. So the very first question that you are going to ask yourself is, what is the name of this particular group? What shall we name this particular group? And the second question that you will ask your friends that what are the ground rules that must be followed in this particular WhatsApp group? Now this particular name is the official name of that particular WhatsApp group, and this ground rules are known as the Constitution. Now let's say with respect to India, what is the official name and the Constitution? What is the name that is mentioned in the Constitution of India? The official name is the name that is present in the rule book that is known as the Constitution, right? So obviously you know that the official name one is India. What about Hindustan? Is it an official name? No. The two official names of India are India and Bharat. As you can see, this is our Constitution, right? This is our Constitution, the very first page of the Constitution. And the very first article mentions the name of the Constitution. The name is India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Now this particular article has framed a ton of questions in UPSC prelims starting from 2014. This particular line, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, is so important. It's very important. India and Bharat are the two official names of the country that is Republic of India. Right? So your question is, what about Hindustan? Is Hindustan the official name of India? So unfortunately, no. Hindustan is not the official name of India. However, many Indians and maybe some parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan, they do know this region as Hindustan. but it's not the official name of India. India, that is Bharat, shall be the union of states. In this video, we are going to discuss what was India called during the prehistoric times, right? So this is India in the prehistoric time, not just India, pretty much the whole of Africa, Central Asia, Asia, and parts of Europe. This is the prehistory, around 5 lakh years ago. So the question is, what was India known during this time? Right? Now, before we go into what was India known during this time, that question, let's, look few things about this prehistoric time. As you can see, you have the species of Homo erectus in front of you. Now, this particular species is an ancestor or pretty much a close relative of our species. Our species is known as Homo sapiens. Okay, so these are the Homo erectus is pretty much a very close relative to our own species, that is Homo sapien, technically our ancestor. 5 lakh years ago, this species was, found in Africa, right? Now, what was this species doing in Africa? Well, it can be safely said they were hunters and gatherers, right? Now, 2 lakh years ago, this species spread to the parts of India, Central Asia, parts of Arabia and all. So the question is, do we have any scientific evidence, any archaeological evidence about the existence of this particular species 2 lakh years ago in parts of India? Yes, we do have. So as it happens, a fragment of this particular species was found near the Narmada Valley. Okay? A fragment of the skull of this particular species was found near the Narmada Valley. And it was found by this gentleman called as Arun Sonakia. He was a geologist. Okay, so why bother explaining all these things? Well, the answer is very simple. The idea is that this species was present in India 2 lakh years ago. So obviously, your assumption is, what was India called by this species during this time, the prehistoric time? Now, there is one important thing you should know, that in the prehistoric times, there was no system of writing, right? History by default is divided into 3 parts: prehistory, protohistory, as well as history. We are dealing with the prehistoric times. In the prehistoric times, there is no system of writing. We were evolving and living in caves and hunting and gathering food. There was no system of writing developed. So even if there was a name for India by these species, we can't possibly know because there was no system of writing. Why the Indus Valley Civilization was called as Meluha? So let's explore. So this is the world in 3300 BC. The political structure known as India is not existent at this point. We have traveled way back to the past, 3300 BC. That is 3300 years before Christ, before the birth of Jesus Christ. We have come a long way into the past. So as you can see, we have few civilizations here. So these are the civilizations. We have the Egyptian, we have the Sumerian, we have the Harappan, and we have the Chinese civilization. Harappan civilization is also known as the Indus Valley Civilization. Now the question is, what was the name of the civilization during this time? What was the name of the Indus Valley Civilization in 3300 BCE? So you would be like, hey, it's Harappa. No. Harappa is a recent name that we have given to this civilization. So the story is something like this. We have this gentleman called as Alexander Cunningham. So he was an archaeologist And what he did, he found many seals along the Indus Valley River. And the crux of these seals were located in this particular region called as Harappa. Harappa was a village. He found a lot of Indus Valley seals along this river, specifically Ravi River, which is a tributary of Indus Valley, of Indus River. In 1921, two gentlemen, that is Dr. Dayaram Sahni and Dr. Vatsa, discovered a big metropolis. And this metropolis was located near the Harappan village. Right? So that is why, since it was one of the major and the earliest site discovered for the Indus Valley, along the Indus Valley, that is why it was named as Harappan civilization. But remember this name, Harappa, is a very recent name of this particular civilization. But it was not known as Harappa during the ancient time. Let's say in 3300 BC, it was not known as Harappa. So the question is, what was the name? The oldest name for this particular civilization is Meluha. Okay, the oldest name is Meluha. This particular region that is shaded in yellow was most likely called as Meluha. So the question is, how do we know that this particular region that is, in yellow, or let's say the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization was called as Meluha? Do we have any evidence for that? There are evidences. So let me present those evidences. So these are the three evidences. The first one is, it is derived from a word called as Melakam. The second word is, it is derived from a word called as Elu. And the third one is, it is derived from the word Malha. Okay, Melakam, Elu and Malha. Melakam, Elu and Malha. These are the three words. So let's explore in detail about each of these words. And let's understand how this word Meluha came into existence. Let's focus on Melakam. Awesome. So as you can see, we are going to focus on this two particular civilization. The first one is Sumer, as well as the second one is our own civilization, that is Harappan civilization, right? Now remember this. These two civilizations were like the superpowers of that time. There were many Neolithic cultures located around the whole world, but these four civilizations, that is the Egyptian, Sumerian, Harappan and the Chinese civilization, were like the superpowers of this time. Now we are going to focus on Sumer as well as Harappan only. Okay. So as you can see, Sumer and Harappa, they traded a lot with each other. Okay, they traded a lot with each other. So Sumer refers to a particular region in their text called as Meluha, with which they traded. Right? So the question is, how do we know about these? Now there are many evidences in Sumer that exclusively belong to the Harappan civilization. For example, we have the beads from Harappa. We have the weights from Harappa. We have the seals from Harappa in Sumer. That means Sumer and Harappa had trade relations. Right? Similarly, Harappa also have shown many distinctive Sumerian artifacts in their region, in Harappa. So definitely Sumer and Harappa had a trade relations. Now Sumer talks about a country in the inscriptions or literature like Sargon of Akkad. Okay, it talks about a particular country, and this country they referred to as Melakam. As you can see, that is the name for Meluha, right? So this particular region, according to them, was in highlands, was mountainous region. There are chances that it was Harappan region. Now, a very important thing to note that is the term Melakam means highland region. This word Melakam is a Dravidian word. Now, if you are not familiar with Dravidian word, it's basically, in a very easy way to explain, South Indian languages. Dravidian languages essentially means South Indian languages these days. Okay. Now, please don't come and bite me if the explanation is wrong, but Dravidian region languages essentially means South Indian languages. You have the Tamil, you have Malayalam, you have Kannada, and you have Telugu. These are the four major South Indian languages. Now, this particular word, Melakam, comes from a Dravidian word, which means highland or mountain or a plateau. As you can see, you have a mountain or a plateau. It's up to you to decide what it is. It basically means highland region. So the question is, how did the archaeologists know about this? Right? So they came across an inscription by this guy, Sargon of Akkad. Now Sargon was a very important king in Sumer. So this is his mask. Okay, as you can see, this is his mask, and this is how he looked like. Now, it's not really important for UPSC to understand how a Sumerian king looked like, but the reason I have added it because, well, I just added it. And this is the AI rendition, how the Sumerian king would look like, right? That is Sargon of Akkad. He mentions that they had a beautiful trade relation with a region called as Meluha, right? So this word Melakam may be the reason why the term Meluha came to existence, which means highland region in Dravidian languages. Now remember, it's not necessary the Harappans used to, talk in Tamil or Telugu or Kannada or Malayalam. No. These are the recent languages called as the Dravidian languages. Harappans might have used Proto-Dravidian language. Proto-Dravidian language is basically the ancestors of, Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, and Kannada. So that is about the relationship between Sumer as well as Harappa. Right? Now let's focus on the second one. That is, you have another word that is Elu. Right? So let's focus on that. Meluha may be derived from this particular word that is Elu. So what is Elu? Elu simply means sesame seeds. Now, Sumer was a big fan of sesame oil. Sumer used to import a lot of sesame seed. Now, the major exporter of sesame seed happens to be India. And maybe a coincidence, but Elu in South India means sesame. So there is a chance that the word Meluha came from Elu. There may be a chance, right? Because Elu means sesame in southern India. Still Elu means sesame seed in southern India. So there is a possibility that after all, Meluha is a derivative of the word Elu. Now let's focus on the third one, that is, it is derived from the word Malha. Right? We have discovered Melakam, Elu, and Malha. Let's focus on Malha. So, as you can see, between Sumer and Harappa, there were two means of travel. The first one is the land route, and the second one is by boat, the sea route, right? Land route and sea route. Now remember this, during the ancient times, it was more convenient to travel by the sea route. And Sumer often talks about a region from where you have a lot of sailors coming in to their country for trade, of course. And Malha is the word that means country of sailors. Coincidence? I don't think so. Malha became Melhua, or somehow Elu became Meluha, or Malakham became Meluha. So there is a possibility, or there is a big chance, the region that we called as the Indus Valley Civilization was known as Meluha. So in this video, we are going to discuss how India got the name Bharat. Or let's discuss what is the origin of this particular word Bharat. So let's explore. Now the term Bharat is derived from these three sources. The first source is from an ancient Rigvedic tribe called as Bharata. The second one is from a legendary king mentioned in Mahabharata. And the third one is from an ancient legendary king called as Bharat mentioned in Vishnu Purana. Okay, so let me just repeat this again. So these are the three resources from where we got the reference Bharat. The first one is from an ancient Rigvedic tribe called as Bharata. The second one is from the king Bharata mentioned in Mahabharata. And the third one is the king Bharata mentioned in Vishnu Purana. So these are the three resources from we got this particular term Bharat. So let's explore the first one, that is from an ancient Rigvedic tribe called as Bharata. Now to understand this particular tribe that is Bharata, let's understand Indo-European languages. Okay, let's understand Indo-European languages. As you can see, the Indo-European language is divided into two parts, Indo-Iranian and European. Let's understand each of them. Let's go to Indo-Iranian. Now these languages are something we Indians are quite familiar with. As you can see, you have Hindi, then you have Urdu, Marathi, Konkani, Awadhi, Bengali, Nepali, Punjabi, Sindhi, Kurdish and Persian. Most of them like Punjabi, Bengali, Hindi, Awadhi, Urdu, Marathi and Konkani are actively used in India. Some languages like Kurdish and Persian are located in the Iranian sphere, right? So there is a relationship between all these languages. The common ancestor is Sanskrit. Many of the words are from Sanskrit. So these are the Indo-Iranian languages. So let's explore where these languages are concentrated, right? So as you can see in front of you, this is the map of the whole world. And you have the Indo-Iranian languages. As you can see, this is the whole of the continent, and you have Kurdish, Persian, Punjabi, Hindi, Bengali, Marathi and Gujarati. Pretty much these languages stretches from Iraq to parts of northern India and even to Bangladesh, right? So this is the spread of the Indo-Iranian languages. Now let's have a look into the second one, that is the European languages, right? So these are the European languages. You have Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, English, German, Dutch and Greek. Actually there are a lot many, but these are the most important European languages that we both know of, right? So these are the languages. So what about them? Now let's explore the territorial area where these languages are actively spoken. So these are those areas, right? Pretty much the whole of Europe and parts of Russia. As you can see in the west, we have Spanish, Portuguese, English. Then in the middle, we have Greek, Italian, German, Dutch, French and Russian towards the east. So these are the European languages, right? So we have learned about the Indo-Iranian languages and we have learned about the European languages. So what if I tell you there is some kind of similarity between the Indo-Iranian languages as well as the European languages? So that is why I have marked all of them in black. there is a similarity between European languages and Indo-Iranian languages. Despite vast difference, there are some words that are actively used in English which is common to the words used in Sanskrit or Hindi. Let's explore them, right? So for example, this is the word mother, right? Now as you can see, it is somewhat similar to the Sanskrit word mater or mother or ma, right? Then we have the Latin word mater. In French we have mère, madre and mother, right? So as you can see, the Sanskrit word is somewhat similar to the English, French and the Spanish word. Now let's go to the second one, that is father. So as you can see, the pronunciation of father, that is Pitar, is commonly used in French, Spanish and even Latin. Okay, so my point is very clear. Let's say UK. UK is significantly far away from India, but the language that is used is somewhat similar to the language used in India. There is some kind of relationship. To explain you better, let me show you the family tree, right? So once again, this is the family tree. In front of you, you have once again the Indo-Iranian language, okay? The left side, you have the Indo-Iranian language. And on the right side, you have the European languages, right? Now, there are many words which are common to both of these language trees, right? So the reason is there is a common language called as the Indo-European language, right? Indo-European language. Let me repeat it again. There are many loan words or many common words that is used in the Indo-Iranian language, which is common to the European language. So that means there is a common ancestor, right? There is a common ancestor. So those are known as the Indo-European languages. So now let's learn about the common ancestor. So we are going back into the past, deep into the past. Let's say 3300 BC. This is way before the birth of Jesus Christ. And here you have the early 4 civilizations. The first one is the early Sumerian civilization. The second one is the early Egyptian civilization. The third one is our own early Harappan civilization or early Indus Valley civilization. Then we have the early Chinese civilization. So these are the 4 civilizations. Okay, the 4 civilizations of the Bronze Age, the 4 civilizations which ruled the Bronze Age. We will discuss about these civilizations in the later parts of our history chapters, right? Now, let me show you one more interesting thing. So, as you can see, we have a gentleman here. So, this is a artificial reconstruction of a boy that was found in the Rakhigari side of Harappa. So this is how a Harappan looked like, the early Harappan looked like. So this is a artificial intelligence reconstruction how a boy during that period in early Harappa looked like. Okay, so just giving you an example, right? So what's next? Now there is an important thing you have to understand. These civilizations grew, right? When these civilizations grew, along with this civilization, there was a culture. Now, there's a difference between culture and civilization. Culture is pretty much primitive, right? Civilization means they are a level above culture. In cultures, they are just focused on farming and pottery and all those stuff. But in civilization, they have gone beyond agriculture and pottery. They have gotten into art and architecture. They have gotten into trade with other civilization. So as you can see, Egyptian, Sumerian, Harappan and Chinese, these are civilizations. However, at the top you have a culture called as Yamanaya culture. This particular culture is the forefather of the European as well as the Indo-Aryan languages. This particular culture, Yamanaya culture. And as you can see, there is a gentleman, a bald gentleman. So this is again a facial reconstruction of the skeleton that was found in Yamanaya, or the parts where the Yamanaya culture was located. This particular people of Yamnai culture, they were focused on farming, agriculture, hunting. Now there are few, similarities between the cultures of Sumerian and Harappan with Yamnai culture, but you should understand that Yamnai culture were, more into invasion. They were focused on horses. They knew how to work with horses, and that is why they spread their cultures into a lot many territories. Let's go forward in time. Let's say 2700 BC. As you can see, the Yamnai culture has spread towards the west, right? As you can see, it has gone a little more into the west. Now it is covering parts of France and Germany. So it has also reached the parts of Czechoslovakia and all. Okay, so it has covered parts of Czechoslovakia. On the other hand, if you look down, you have the Egyptian, Sumerian, Harappan and Chinese. They have grown. Now, right now, these cultures, especially the Harappan culture, is in the most mature form, right? It's in the peak period, where the Harappan civilization was at the peak period. During 3300 BC, it was in a growing stage. Right now, 2700 BC, it's at the mature phase, the peak phase. Awesome. Okay, so as you can see, you have the Yamnai culture and it has spread. Now let's go forward again in time. Now this is 2400 BC. The Yamnai culture has again spread to parts of, Portugal and Spain. It has also reached parts of UK. Awesome. Okay, now comes the interesting part. 1800 BC. The Yamnai culture has spread to the parts of Central Asia. The Yamnai culture in Central Asia is known as the Sinhasta culture and the Andronova culture. These two cultures are quite important for Indian history. From Sinhasta and Andronova, the people who came to India are known as the Rigvedic Indo-Aryans. Right? Okay. So as you can see now, the civilizations, that is the Egyptian, Sumerian, Harappan and the Chinese, have declined. From 3300 BC, it was the rise. Okay, it was growing. Around 2700 BC, it reached the mature phase. Now it's in the declining phase. On the other hand, the Yamnai culture, okay, it's a culture, not a civilization. The Yamnai culture is growing. It is spreading out to different parts of the world. Okay, so we have reached at that point 1800 BC. So what's next? Now, as you can see, 1700 BC. The Yamnai culture has again spread. However, many of the civilization, the Bronze Age civilization, are on decline. Like this, it's on decline. 1700 BC, the Harappan civilization has split into three parts. It's in a declining phase. Right? So what's next? Let's explore. Now we are going to focus on the parts of the Indian subcontinent. We have the Indian part. Okay, as you can see, you have the Indian part, Kashmir and parts of Punjab and Haryana, UK. You have those parts, and then we have pretty much the whole of Pakistan and pretty much the whole of Afghanistan, right? And at the top, right? At the top, you have Andronova culture, right? At the top, you have the Andronova culture in the left. So this is where the Rigvedic Aryans came from. Okay. So now we are going to understand the geography of the Indian subcontinent. This is important to understand because there are few passes that you have to know, because without these passes, the Rigvedic Aryans wouldn't have reached India, right? So let's explore them. So as you can see, you have the Hindu Kush mountains. And as you can see, at the north of the Hindu Kush mountains, it basically acts like a boundary between Afghanistan and Pakistan, right? And one more important thing that you have to know is that it pretty much runs along the entirety of Pakistan, like it's their spine, the spinal cord of Pakistan. right? It separates pretty much in the northern part, it separates Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Hindu Kush mountains. Now remember, these mountains has some passes through which the Western people, or let's say the Indo-Aryans or people from the Western side, can enter into India or Pakistan. So another important thing that you have to know is these are the Himalayas, right? We are familiar with Himalayas, so there's nothing to worry about. These are the Himalayas. So what's next? There is an important more thing that you have to know. Okay, as you can see, this is the path through which these Aryans are going to come. Now, as you can see, you have a small spot there. Okay, there's a small group, not small group, quite a big group of Rigvedic Aryans present near Afghanistan. Okay, as you can see, you have this particular group. They are going to reach India through this particular pass. So they have moved forward around 1550 BC. They have reached the Hindu Kush mountains and near the Khyber Pass. They are trying to squeeze in, right? And by 1500 BC, they have reached the Indian subcontinent. They have reached India. They were already in Indian subcontinent. Now they have reached India. So what's next? Now there is another important geographical thing that you have to know about, the rivers. Let's explore them. So these are our rivers. Okay, you are already familiar with this particular river, that is the Indus River. Rest, the Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bhees, Satluj and Saraswati, they are its tributaries. Okay, there is the whole Indus River that is flowing along, and then we have the Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bhees, Satluj and Saraswati. Now, a very important thing to note that all these rivers are mentioned in Rig Veda, right? All these rivers are mentioned in Rig Veda. There is a very important aspect that you have to know right now. Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bhees and Satluj are still present in India as well as in Pakistan. However, the river Saraswati, it has just simply vanished. Many geologists agree that Saraswati River does exist, but it's flowing underground. So I have marked Saraswati to point out a very important aspect. Let me show you that. So this particular region that is marked in yellow, it's known as Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu. Sindhu means river or ocean. Okay. Sindhu means river or ocean. Sapta means 7. Sapta Sindhu means 7 rivers. 7 rivers. Sapta Sindhu means 7 rivers. And as you can see, the whole area, okay, the whole area mentioned in yellow, marked in yellow, is the region where the whole Sapta Sindhu river flows. As you can see, you can find the whole 7 rivers along that particular region marked in yellow. You can find the Indus River, the Jhelum River, the Chenab River, the Ravi River, the Bhees River, the Satluj River, and also the Saraswati River. A very fertile and important region. This is where the Rig Veda was actually composed, the region of Sapta Sindhu. So what's next? Now the Rigvedic Aryans reached in many different, tribes. They came in multiple waves. Okay, they came in multiple waves. The first wave arrived around, let's say, 1550 BC. From then, there came many different waves. And they established small farming communities across these Sapta Sindhu rivers. So as you can see, these are those cultures, the Rigvedic cultures located around the Sapta Sindhu region. Okay, some of them goes even far up to Afghanistan. Now, there is an important thing that you have to know. All these are small kingdoms or cultures, small tribes, but essentially Indo-Aryans. Now, you have to focus on the red part, the place where the Bharata tribe is located, right? Bharata tribe is essentially located on the eastern part. right? The eastern part, and is located near the most fertile regions, the part where it covers the most of the Vedic rivers, right? Now, the thing is, maybe due to the lack of resources or the over exploitation of the resources back in those time, it was water and land. Bharata tribe actually expanded a lot. However, the rest of these tribes didn't like it. So what happens next? These tribes form an alliance against the Bharata tribe, right? And the Bharata tribe was led by this man called as King Sudas. King Sudas led the Bharata tribe against these 10 tribes, rest of the 9 tribes. And this battle that happened between, these 10 tribes is known as the Battle of the 10 Kings. It was essentially Bharata versus the rest of the 9 tribes. And what happened? Pretty much all the 9 tribes ganged up against the Bharata tribe, which was led by King Sudas. However, for some reason, the Bharata tribe defeated all of them. I don't know how it happened, but Rigveda mentioned there was a clever ploy made by the King Sudas of Bharata tribe, and that is why they were able to defeat all of them. A very interesting thing that you can learn from Rigveda. So what's next? Now, Bharata tribe essentially absorbed all of them into their empire, their own kingdom. King Sudas was pretty much quite benevolent, and he forgave everyone. And he later asked all of them to join and make a bigger kingdom, a bigger polity. And this essentially became the first Indian polity called as the Kuru kingdom. Now, the people in Kuru were quite happy with King Sudas. And they started taking the identity called as the Bharata tribe. All the tribes were dissolved and the Bharata tribe became the central tribe. And maybe this is why the Bharata tribe became legendary, that its name became synonymous with India. So now let's focus on the king Bharata mentioned in Mahabharata. Let's focus on him. So this is the King Bharata mentioned in Mahabharata, right? So what about him? So as you can see in a gist, this is Bharata's empire. All right, let's know few facts about this guy. Now, one of the most important things that you have to know is that there are 2 lineages in Indian history. The first one is Suryavanshi and the second one is Chandravanshi. Now this guy, Bharata, King Bharata, is from the lunar dynasty or Chandravanshi. He's a Chandravanshi dynasty. He's from Chandravanshi dynasty. And he became the Chakravarti emperor. Now the most important thing that you have to know is he is an ancestor of Pandavas, Kauravas, Brihadartha and Jarasandha. So most likely you have already learned about Pandavas and Kauravas by, reading Mahabharata or watching TV serials like Mahabharata. But you should also know about, there was another clan called as Brihadartha and also another clan called as Jarasandha. So this guy was pretty much the ancestor of Pandavas, Kauravas, Brihadartha and Jarasandha. Now the question is how he was born. Now for exams like UPSC, we don't have to go into much details, just you have to remember this. He was the son of Dushyanta and Shakuntala. All right, Dushyanta and Shakuntala. That's all. Now, how Dushyanta and Shakuntala meet, how they got married, is none of the concern for UPSC. All right. So now he's also mentioned in Abhijananta Shakuntalam. Now remember this, he's of course mentioned in Mahabharata, but he's also mentioned in Kalidasa's book called as Abhijananta Shakuntalam. Right? Okay. So pretty much you already know this. The reason why we have made this video, why we are learning this, is because there is a reason that this guy inspired the Indian subcontinent, to be named after him. He earned this title of Digvijaya Chakravartin for this big empire. He had a vast empire. All right. Now, he is said to have ruled for 27,000 years. That is a bit ridiculous, but as per the myths, he has ruled for 27,000 years, which ideally doesn't fit into the frame of Indian history. Let's say he has ruled, but he was also cursed by Muni Durvasa. Okay, the Muni who cursed him, the sage who cursed him was Muni Durvasa, right? And he had a son called as Bhumyanu. Okay, now the thing about Bhumyanu is that nothing much, there are no accounts, there are no books, or even we have books on Bhumyanu, but the details are actually pretty skewed and shady. So we don't know much about Bhumyanu. All right. So now let's focus on the third part, that is Bharata, King Bharata mentioned in Vishnu Purana. So who is this guy? Now this guy may be the same guy that is mentioned in Mahabharata, the same Bharata mentioned in Mahabharata, or he can be a completely different guy. Now Vishnu Purana mentions a line about Bharata. The land north of the ocean and south of the Himalayas is called Bharat, where the descendants of Bharata reside. All right. So according to him, as you can see, this is the Hindu Kush and these are the Himalayas. So pretty much from Himalayas to the the ocean, that is where the descendants of this man Bharata lived. All right. So we have already learned about Bharata mentioned in Mahabharata. So this guy is Bharata mentioned in Vishnu Purana. Awesome. So what's next? Now we have to focus on a very important topic, that is the earliest inscription that mentions about King Bharata, right? So the earliest inscription comes from Odisha. Now this guy is King Kharvela. King Kharvela was a big ruler in parts of Kalinga. During those time, parts of Orissa was known as Kalinga, right? Now he commissioned a temple, and around the outskirts of that temple there is a cave. Okay, there is a cave, and in this particular cave there is a line about Bharata, okay. So this particular inscription is known as Hathi Gumpha inscription of King Kharvela, right? Now this is found in Orissa. Now here Bharatvarsha or Bharata's empire is used in a geographical sense. Now remember, this Bharatvarsha is quite limited in North India. Basically, he says Bharatvarsha is only the western part of the Ganges plain. Western part of Ganges plain, basically the west of Magadha. We will learn in detail, but essentially this is the area he mentions. Okay, and as you can see, this is particularly the inscription that talks about Bharatvarsha or Bharata's descendants or Bharata's empire. Right? So this is the actual epigraphical evidence or inscription that mentions about Bharata. So in this video we will learn why parts of India was known as Aryavarta. Let's explore. So what is Aryavarta? Now this is a name that appears in many of the texts such as Manusmriti, Bauddhanya, Dharmasutra, Mahabhashya and Dharmasutra. So these are the 4 texts that talks about this particular region called as Aryavarta. Let's explore each of them in detail. Let's start with what is Aryavarta, right? So Aryavarta essentially is a combination of 2 words, Arya and Varta. Arya basically means noble, okay, a noble person. And Varta means country, all right. So it basically means the country of nobles. Aryavarta means the country of nobles. So what does it essentially means? It means the land of Aryans. Now you're already familiar with the Rigvedic Aryans, who came from the Yamnaic culture, which was located near the Caspian Sea. Later they migrated to the parts of Central Asia, and slowly they moved to parts of India. As you can see, you have the Yamunai culture in red. Later they moved themselves to the parts of Central Asia, and now they have reached Pakistan, and pretty much later they conquered the parts of India. So this land is known as land of Aryans, right? So this area is called as Aryavarta. Now the interesting thing that we have to learn is that the concept of Aryavarta kept on changing. Okay, with time the land area of Aryavarta significantly increased. Let's start with the earliest reference of Aryavarta. The earliest reference of Aryavarta comes from a book called as Baudinya Dharma Sutra. Now this particular book, it's an early text in the Vedic period, okay, and it talks about Aryavarta as a land between the Ganges and the Yamuna river, between Ganga and Yamuna river. So basically it's between the Doab region, a very fertile region, right? So it's a land between Ganga and Yamuna river, right? Now important thing that you have to say is this particular region, okay, meant the land of the pure. However, according to them, anyone outside this particular land boundary is practically impure, right? So let's move forward in time, okay? The next we have is, the works of Dharma Sutra as well as Patanjali's Mahasabhya. Now this particular text, these two texts, broadens the definition of Aryavarta. Okay, now as you can see, Aryavarta is between the Hindu Kush mountains, Himalayas, and of course the Vindhyan mountains. Vindhyan mountains, or technically even the Narmada river, which is close to the Vindhyan mountains, is considered as the boundary of Aryans, right? Hindu Kush is the western extreme. Himalayas is pretty much the northeastern extreme, and the Vindhyan mountains along with the Narmada river is the southern extreme. So this is essentially Aryavarta. Okay, now we are going to look again into another reference which talks about Aryavarta. This reference is a very important reference to Aryavarta. This is by Manusmriti. So Manusmriti talks about Aryavarta, which is beyond Vindhya mountains. And this is for the first time Aryavarta is touched by both the seas. As you can see, Aryavarta is now near to the Arabian Sea as well as the Bay of Bengal. Aryavarta, the concept of Aryavarta in geographical sense, has increased exponentially, right? Earlier it was located to parts of Doab, the region between Ganga and Yamuna, according to Baudinya Dharma Sutra. Later it expanded to parts reaching up to the Vindhyan mountains, according to Dharma Sutra and Patanjali's Mahabhashya. Later, according to Manusmriti, it is now touching the parts of Arabian Sea as well as Bay of Bengal. So the idea is very clear. The concept of Aryavarta was not static. It kept on changing. So accordingly, when the Brahminical influence grew, the concept of Aryavarta also increased. In this video, we are going to discuss how did the name India originate. So now we have established that there was this tribe called as Bharata, and they defeated all the other Rigvedic tribes and established their kingdom called as Kuru kingdom. Now around 1000 BC, okay, 1000 BC, Indo-Aryan cultures, these Rigvedic people expanded a lot. As you can see, earlier they were actually concentrated in parts of Saptasindhu. Okay, they were actually concentrated in parts of Saptasindhu, those river area. But now they have moved forward, and actually they have conquered parts of Ganga and Yamuna, the fertile plains of Ganga and Yamuna too. Later, they fragmented themselves into very different polities. By 700 BC, these small Rigvedic kingdoms were established, and these were called as the 16 Mahajanapadas. As you can see, these are some of the Mahajanapadas located in northern India. To give you a perspective, as you can see, these are the 16 Mahajanapadas around 620 BC. These are the Iron Age kingdoms, 620 BC. So what's next? Now, the Persian Empire, led by this guy called as Darius, invades parts of India. Now, Darius was not really successful in subduing Indians, but he did conquer parts of, let's say, Gandhara, okay, which was pretty much located to the northwest of Pakistan, technically in Afghanistan. Persian Empire got Gandhara. Now remember this, the Persians had problem with the letter S. They called the letter S as H. And that is why instead of Sapta, it became Hapta, and Sindhu became Hindu. So this is for the first time around 516 BC, the term Hindu was coined. Persians called the people living around the region of Indus as Hindu because they failed to pronounce it as Sindhu. Now it became Hindu. Right? Moving forward. So now we are going to refer to one more term called as Hodu. So what is Hodu? So as it happened, King Darius had a successor called as King Xerxes. Now you may have heard this name King Xerxes because he was immortalized in this movie called as 300. Right? So this is the same guy who fought against Greeks. King Xerxes had a queen called as Queen Esther. Queen Esther is a famous figure in Bible as well as Torah. Torah is a religious book of the Jews. Bible is a religious book of Christians. Queen Esther is a famous figure for Christians as well as Jews. Queen Esther mentions a particular region around the Indus River as Hodu. So essentially, Sindhu became Hindu and Hindu became Hodu. Quite simple, isn't it? Okay, so let's move forward in time. Now we are essentially reaching that place where the region around the Indus River will be called as India. Now we are in 425 BC, the same time around King Xerxes, and the Persian Empire as well as the Greeks are in total conflict. And that guy at the top is Herodotus. He is a very important guy because he is known as the father of history. Herodotus mentions in his book the region around the Indus River as India. He knew about India from Greek explorers like Scylax of Carianda and many of the ancient merchants and travelers who have visited parts of India. Personally, he himself didn't visit India, but he knew about India through the works of travelers. He met a lot of travelers who have traveled through the Persian Empire to Greece from India. And that's why he knows about India. Now, as you can see, Sindhu becomes Hindu, then it becomes Hodu, and it becomes India. Essentially, Sindhu is the word given by the Rigvedic Aryans. It was later called as Hindu by the Persians. Then Jews started calling it as Hodu. And finally, the Greeks started calling it as India. So Herodotus was the one who essentially called the region near Indus as India. Awesome. So moving on. Now let's learn what is Indicate. So as it happens around 326 BC, Alexander the Great army, after defeating the Persian Empire, marches towards the Indus River. Alexander the Great pretty much wanted to conquer the whole world. He started from Greece, then later destroyed the Persian Empire and marched towards the east. Now in India, in 326 BC, India was led by the Nanda Empire. However, around the outskirts near the Indus River, we had the Porus, King Porus. King Porus checked the advance of Alexander's army. Alexander was forced to retreat back. Now, while retreating back, he stayed in parts of Persia, Babylon exactly, and he died. Right? Now, Alexander the Great had a lot of generals under him, very capable generals. Some of these generals were Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassandra, and Antiochus. After Alexander the Great died, right? After Alexander the Great died, his generals, pretty much quarreled for his empire. As you can see, this is Alexander the Great's empire in yellow, and parts of his empire are ruled by several of his generals like Ptolemy and Seleucid. So what happens next? Around 300 BC, as you can see, Seleucus Nicator tries to invade the Mauryan Empire. Mauryan Empire is led by a very young and ambitious general and a king called as Chandragupta Maurya. So that is Mauryan Empire. Mauryan Empire successfully defends and gives a stunning blow to the Seleucid Empire led by Seleucus Nicator. As you can see, for the first time in history, the Indian graph has stretched up to parts of Iran. Now, Seleucus Nicator had no other choice but to accept defeat. He gave his daughter in marriage to Chandragupta Maurya, the king of Mauryan Empire. He also sent one of his personal friends, that is Megasthenes, as an ambassador to the Mauryan capital in Patliputra. After Megasthenes returned from India, he wrote an account on India, and this was known as Indica. So as you can see, Sindhu was called as Hindu by the Persians. Hindu was again called as Hodu by the Jews. And finally, Hodu was called as India by the Greeks. Now Megasthenes, who is actually a Greek, called it as Indica. Now let's move forward to the part where India will be called as Hindustan. Let's move ahead. Now this is around 350 AD. And as you can see, this is the polity of pretty much the parts of Central Asia and Indian subcontinent, including Iran. Iran is now ruled by Sassanid Empire. On the top, we have the Hunas. And India is ruled by the Gupta Empire as well as the Vatakata dynasty. These are the major powers of that time. So Sassanids had a trouble, not trouble. Let's say pretty much they used to add a suffix called as stan to denote land. S-T-A-N means land. Stan means land. And that's how Hindu become Hindustan, the land of Hindus, around 350 AD. Right? Now we have to go again forward in time to understand one more important thing. So Hind. This is a short form of Hindustan. Right? So this is the polity of the world around 940 AD. You have the Samanid Empire, the Abbasid Empire, okay, and the fragmented Indian polity. Now a very important Persian geographer called as Abu Muhammad Istikari. Okay, remember this name, Abu Muhammad Istikari, okay, along his travels, mentioned the region beyond the Indus River as Hind. Right? So he's the first guy to mention the region beyond the Indus River as Hind. Cool. So let's move forward, where once again India will be called Hindustan. So this is now the Mughal era, 1580. You have the Mughal Emperor Akbar, and the Safavids is the rulers of the Persian Empire or the region around Iran. We have the Ottoman Empire and the remnants of, the Mongols, the Khosrow Khanate. And during this time, Akbar preferred to call the region around India as Hindustan. Right? So we have learned how Sindhu became Hindu, it became Hodu, it became India, it became Indica, and finally Hind, and at the last, Hindustan. So in this video, we are going to discuss why India was known as Jambudweep. So let's get started. So you are probably familiar with Jamun. So this is Jamun. Now, India was known as the land of Jamun trees or Jambu trees. Now, Jambudweep is essentially two words, Jambu and Dweep. Jambu is basically Jamun, okay, and as you can see, this is the scientific name of Jamun, and I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm just going to leave it like there. And then we have, how did the fruit look like? It's dark purple in color and it's a bit sweet and tarty flavor. Okay, and the important thing you have to know is that it's an evergreen tree. It doesn't shed their leaves during any season. It's an evergreen tree. Now, Dweep basically means island or continent. Okay, so it's a mixture of two words, Jambu and Dweep. Jambu, Dweep, Jambu, Dweep. Right, so let's explore this in detail. So, where or who used to call it? There are many countries in South Asia which used to refer India as Jambudweep. Now, the very first evidence of Jambudweep is found in Chanakya's Arthashastra. Now, Chanakya's Arthashastra was composed somewhere around 200 BC. Okay, 200 before the birth of Jesus Christ. 200 BC, during the times of Mauryan Emperor Chandragupta, or let's say Bimbisara. Right? So it was composed during that time. So essentially during that time, India was likely known as Jambudweep. Now there is an important aspect that you have to know, that not as a geographical context, in cosmological way also Jambudweep was mentioned. Now let's explore the cosmological way. So as you can see, this is the entire Jambudweep. As you can see, there are 7 concentric circles. Each concentric circles are basically islands. And in between these concentric circles, they used to have, a sea. Okay. So we are going to describe each of these concentric circles along with the seas in between them. Let's start with the center. So in the center, we have a mountain called as Mount Meru. So this is the center of Jambudweep, right? Now what's next? After this particular circle, there is a sea called as the Salt Sea. The sea is filled with salt. And after that, there is another concentric circle or a ring of islands called as Plaksodvipa, right? I don't know how it's pronounced. It's pure Sanskrit. Now, after Plaskadvipa, there is another sea called as the Sugarcane Sea. So this is the Sugarcane Sea. Then we have one more island called as Salmali Dvipa. Then we have Kusadvipa, and there is a sea called as Wine Sea. Okay, it is filled with wine. Again, this is cosmology, mythology combination, something straight out of dreams, but we have to respect that because this is our culture and we have to respect that. Let's move forward. Okay, I'm just going to run those slides. Then we have one more sea, that is the Ghee Sea, and there is another island called as Karniya Deepa. Okay, then we have one more sea called as Yogurt Sea, the Curd Sea, and we have one more Deepa called as the Saka Deepa. Finally, we have one more sea called as the Milk Sea, which is in between the Pushkar Deepa and Saka Deepa. And finally, at the last, there is one more sea, that is the Water Sea. Okay, and after the Water Sea or beyond the Water Sea, there is Loka Loka Mountains. Okay, Loka Loka Mountains. So that's pretty much we have to know about Jambudvipa. So in this video, we are going to discuss why India was known as Chuantu. So let's explore. Now you probably know this. Buddhism started or originated in India. Siddharth was born in Nepal, but Buddhism originated in India. Right? It spread in India, and from India it went to parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. From Afghanistan and Pakistan, it went to parts of, Upper Tibet. From Upper Tibet, it went to parts of China. From the China, it went to parts of Central Tibet. So pretty much it became the sphere of Buddhist influence. A lot many people in China wanted to travel to India because they considered India to be a very prosperous kingdom, or at least a place where a new teaching, a new religion has started. So many travelers, let's say Hyun Sang, wanted to visit India. They traveled India through many routes, by the sea, some by the land route, through Myanmar and adjacent area, and few actually from parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now these people, they started calling India as heaven. So basically Chuantu means heaven, or the region where a new philosophy, a beautiful philosophy has started. Some of them even called it as Tianchu. Again, the same word for Chuantu, it basically means a region where a new philosophy has started, or a new religion has started, or it can be said the place where the heaven is. Hyun Sang actually even went further and, for reverence of India, he started calling it as Yuntu. Now remember, Hyun Sang is a very famous traveler about whom we will discuss in the later chapters of our history. So what's next? This Buddhism actually spread even to the parts of Japan. Now since it went as far as Japan, the Japanese also had a name for India. It was Tenjuku. It meant heaven. Japanese referred to India as heaven. All because of Buddhism. Buddhism actually became a predominant religion around this area, China, parts of Mongolia, and Japan. So these countries practically owe their culture to India. So in this video, we are going to discuss what is Ajna Bhavarsha. Let's explore. So this is another name for India. Ajna Bhavarsha, let's split this word. We have split the words into three parts, that is Aja, Naba and Varsha. Aja basically means Brahma. Brahma is the creator god in Hinduism. Naba means navel, okay, Brahma's navel. And Varsha means continent, Brahma's navel continent. So this is something straight off cosmology and mythology, but it was used to describe India. That's pretty much it. So in this video, we are going to discuss the clash of names, that is Bharat versus India. So let's explore. So as you can see, this is India in 1947. The Britishers have left India. And these are the new rulers of our country. The very first question they ask themselves is, what shall we call this country? Now, to help you understand, let's say you have created a WhatsApp group. The very first question that you are going to discuss with your fellow admins is, what shall we call this particular WhatsApp group? That's the first question. And the second question is, what shall be the rules that will govern this WhatsApp group? The rules should be something like there will be no excessive posting of emojis, no political messages, something like that. So those will be the rules. To help you understand, let me just provide the link. The name of the WhatsApp group is the name of the country. The rules for the WhatsApp group is called as the Constitution, right? And the admins are the Constituent Assembly, right? Let me repeat again. The WhatsApp group is our country. The admin is basically the Constituent Assembly who are going to frame the rules called as the Constitution. The Constitution are essentially the rules. The very first question is, what shall we call this country? Now in 1949, they had an election to elect the leaders who will be framing these particular rules, right? The elections were held and people were elected to the parliament, or let's say constituent assembly. Right? As you can see, this is the parliament and this is the constituent assembly. Excellent. They are going to frame the rules called as the constitution. Right? Now comes the problem, what shall we call this country? The presiding officer was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman. He said that let's call this country as Bharat or India. Now this particular reform was set back by a lot of people. They were not in favor for the name India. They said no India. Bharat is okay, but no India. Because India actually shows that we are still a colonial power, a colonial state of the Britishers. Right? So let's not go with India. Ambedkar said, okay, fine. Then decide yourself what you want to call it. Another member called as Hargovind Pant, who was from Kumaon, he said that let's call this country as Bharat or Bharatvarsha. Again, this was met by opposition. Let's not call it as Bharat. Now, let me give you 3 reasons why the name Bharat or Bharatvarsha was declined by a lot of people. Let's start with this guy, that is Mahavir Tyagi. He said that, see, the problem with Bharat is it essentially excludes a lot of people, let's say minorities. Minorities like Jains, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims will not be happy with this name. It will take away the secular credentials of this particular country. Another reason for the opposition was by this guy, Nazaruddin Ahmed. According to him, King Bharat from Mahabharata is a legendary figure. He was a myth. He didn't really exist according to him. So there is no point of naming a country after a legendary figure. The third opposition was by this guy, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. He said that India as a name is famous around the world. The US knows it, UK knows it, Germany knows it, France knows it. Pretty much every country knows that there is a country called as India. So there is no point of changing the name. Right? So what's next? Again, Ambedkar comes with a solution. Let's call it India, that is Bharat. And the reason he gives, because India as a name is not given by the Britishers. Most people had the opposition that India is a name given by the Britishers, which is not true. India is a name that is given by the Greeks as well as the Persians. British didn't have any role in giving the name India to this country. It was given by the Greeks and Persians. Now, there are several videos in my channel that shows the history, how the name Bharat, how the name India, how the name Hindu, how the name Hindustan was developed across the history. Now, to summarize this, way long back, let's say around 1500 BC, a tribe called as Bharata tribe resided around parts of the Indus River. The Indus River was fed by 6 tributaries. So essentially there were 7 rivers around that region, Indus and its 6 tributaries. And this region, in Rig Veda, it is mentioned as Sapta Sindhu. Right? Sapta Sindhu, yani ki 7 rivers. 7 rivers. Now, the Persians came around that region and they started mispronouncing it as Hapta Hindu because they can't pronounce the word S. They started calling it as Hapta Hindu. Later, the Greeks also came around that region and they started mispronouncing it as India. So, Sindhu became Hindu, then became India. So, Britishers didn't have any contribution in giving the name that is India. So, to hate the name India doesn't make any sense. It's quite an ancient name for our country. So, Ambedkar suggested let's go with India, that is Bharat. Now, many members in the Constituent Assembly who were opposed to the idea of India were coming in terms with it. Okay, let's go with India. Now, another bombshell comes. There's a guy called as S.V. Kamath. He proposed that, okay, I'm happy with India, that's not an issue, but let's place the Bharat name in front of India. So ideally we will be calling it as Bharat, or in English, India shall be the Union of States. Now, many people disagreed with it because it looks clumsy. Bharat, or in English, okay, or in English, India. Even frankly, I also don't like it. It looks clumsy. It looks big. So many people were against it. Now, he came with a suggestion that Ireland was called as Irish Free State. Now it is known as Ireland. Earlier it was known as Irish Free State. So people have the right to change their names according to their will. But again, this particular reason was not, okayed, or many people were not happy with this particular stanza, that is Bharat, or in English, India shall be Union of States. That is why finally Ambedkar decided India, that is Bharat, shall be a Union of States. Let's finalize it. This particular line was put into vote in the Parliament, or the Constituent Assembly. And finally, it became the part of the Constitution. India, that is Bharat, shall be the Union of States. It's clearly written, India, that is Bharat, shall be the Union of States. India and Bharat are the two official names of our country because it is mentioned in the Constitution.